Okay, so kick off.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. It's good to see you, especially on such an inclement day. This is Cristín Leach, who will be in conversation with me in a couple of minutes. What I'm going to do first is do a brief run through the work and the chronology of the work. All right, so to give some context, because the work runs from 1985 to this year, 2025, right? So Cristín Leach, I started talking to her about the work, I suppose, back towards the end of 2023, and she agreed to do an essay for the catalogue that I have there. In that catalogue, she's a great phrase I really like, where she said, my work, yeah, it's a dance between meaning and language, right? And I really like that idea of movement. And also it moves back and forward in time, because as I start off with the earliest work, so this is from 1985, and still a student, first year in fine art, to these pieces over here, the large blue one, which is 87, and then the dark ones beside that are 88 from Birmingham. But particularly the blue one from the final year of a diploma degree show year, what I was interested in then was abstract expressionism, and particularly a painter like Jackson Pollock. Now, Jackson Pollock was hugely successful but deeply troubled, and I did a thesis on him with Jackson Pollock as an existential artist. So the idea there is that his fullest realization of himself was through the act of painting. But what also was going on there, and also Jackson Pollock's work was very much about the dance, as he worked on an unstretched canvas on the floor with flicks of paint, very liquid paint, usually quite often household paint. And so he did this dance around. But unfortunately what happened is that he was, well, deeply troubled on many levels, but also his language became incredibly refined. And essentially he worked himself out of, he had nowhere to go. He had refined it down, so he had nowhere to go as such. So that was something that was in my own head. And it's something that runs through all of the work, is that play of language and its ability to express a moment or a gesture or a sense of being. But again, as I said, looking for the language, what led me on then from that work and the idea of abstract expressionism was into the maze paintings. And what I was interested in the maze paintings was something that could work in a number of different ways. So the maze is a visual screen. It's also a metaphor, and on a very basic level, it's a puzzle, because there's two entrances and they meet in the middle. And when I show these paintings back again, these would be the mid-90s in Limerick City Gallery. There was a group of kids came in, and the first thing they did was put their finger on the painting to try and find their way through the maze. And I thought, that's great, getting right into one level of how this works. And then obviously there's a two-band circle in the middle that's divided into ground and sky, so it sets up this kind of shallow landscape space. Now I made these paintings, and then only afterwards I discovered that a circle within a square is a symbol for the union of heavens and earth, and also that the square is a Jungian symbol of the soul. Again, and these things, you know, they are of more or less interest, or more or less importance. They become part of the parameters of the work. So I had these, and the triptych behind you. Part of the triptych actually as well, in terms of looking for language, the actual graffiti is actual graffiti that I photographed in Dublin in the early 90s. So I was interested again in that play of environment and juxtaposing it with more imaginative or obscure or abstract forms. So I moved from those then to paintings like these. So these are the early noughties. So the idea is that again the maze is there with trying to create a richer space, a different dynamic. And then we have the alchemist flower here as such, is trapped in the maze. And I like again getting an interest in the play of light and dark and what it does. So if I was going to define what painting is about, I would say it's about light and colour. Right, and the interplay of that. And of course I read a lot and I listen to a lot of music. So one of the things I had read at the time, was Doris Lessing's memoir of a survivor. And it's a kind of, I suppose it's in an imaginative space itself. It's a kind of post-apocalyptic landscape. But this woman's in her flat watching the kind of tribes move, or people move away, refugees. But what also happens within this novel is that one of the walls in her apartment dissolves. So you have this idea that something flat becomes space. And also, I also like the idea on a atom level that everything is actually in movement. Everything reacts to light, or is what you see is what is absorbed by the material you're looking at. So I like the play of space, this idea of the flat space, the idea of the pattern, again, the flower. And that, of course, evoking a kind of a domestic space. So again, I'm setting up maybe a scenario or an imaginative space in the mind of the viewer. And then the light patch on that. So where is the light patch coming from? Is that coming from behind the viewer? Like, where does the painting start? Where does the painting end? So that was the early 2000s. And then towards, as the 2000s went on, I started doing a lot of drawing. Again, still interested in pattern, and would say the water dragon over here would be one of the I processed the drawings into this, which I call a water dragon. And again, a bit like the light patch on the wall, it's a child's imagination as you look at something. It's like, what can you imagine is in there? What does your eye pick out? So to my mind, it picked out this kind of dragon shape with maybe a moon, a kind of orange moon in there. And I'm still playing on the idea of the water. So this is 2009. I'm still playing on the idea of the water over here and beneath on the panel piece. So again, there's always more. I'm looking for symbolism, or thinking about it, how it might work. And again, the water is a symbol of the unconscious, as is the moon. But underneath then this, you have two kind of dragon-like, snake-like, dragon-like creatures. And so I was playing on the idea of the alchemical Ouroboros, which can be a single snake dragon eating its own tail, or it can be two. And if it's two, usually one has wings and the other has feet. So again, they become symbols of the heavens and the earth, and they become a form of union. But as you can see in my piece there, the actual union is still under negotiation as they're kind of chasing each other. And it's a repetitive pattern, again, like a wallpaper underneath that you only glimpse pieces of. So I like that idea of the repetition. And again, the piece over here with the tiger and the lily, again, came out of the drawings from the late noughties. And the tiger is actually from a Henry Rousseau painting called Tiger Surprised or Storm, or maybe it's called both. But anyway, again, I like that idea, the continuation of the pattern outside the painting. And then the tiger who's afraid of the lily or the flower, of the kind of anthropomorphic form. It's like, so a flower is supposedly kind of nice and inoffensive and decorative. But I kind of like it when the flower was, say, in the bottom, dark print, bottom left on this, that the flower gains another kind of attitude or energy, where it may not be quite what it seems. So that's again, yeah, so that's into 2012, 13. And then we come into the James Street Menagerie, which again is a group of 12 pieces, but I'm looking at a compendium of language here. So in 2011, I kind of bit the bullet and did a course in Jungian psychology with art therapy. And the Jungian stuff is incredibly interesting because it opens a whole panorama of language and symbol, and then into the alchemy, the symbolism within the alchemy, and then Jung's disciples or followers, people like James Hillman. So within this compendium, you have the maze comes in again, you have the snake, you have the moon, but you also have things like the center panel there, second off the right. That comes from a James Hillman idea of you can't see the hole without the fence. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I just like the idea. And then with, say, on the bottom, the orange one on the bottom, Hillman spends a lot of time writing about, at least what I've read of what he's written, about the angel or messenger. Even the angel within the word, the message within the word that you may not be aware of. So here we have a kind of barbed wire situation that has reformed itself into a silhouette of what I think is an angel, to allow the angel through. And so that's again work, and then the buzzsaw runs in here as well. It comes through the work at various stages, because the idea of the buzzsaw is about the obsessive workings of the mind. That's working all the time. And back in college, again, Paul O'Reilly, who was very formative in my education, had this metaphor, and we're all just in first year. And he said, you have a friend, and there's a buzzsaw in the room, and your friend insists on feeding themselves into the buzzsaw because they can't see the blade spinning that fast. How do you stop them, right? He said, well, you know, you convince them, you persuade them, no. He said, you can't do that, they're not listening. And he said, what you do, and none of us figured out the answer. He said, what you do is you unplug the buzzsaw. He said, what art does, art unplugs the buzzsaw, right? So again, idea, it's there, it's something I use. It's kind of floating around, and a lot of the time now, especially as I get older, I'm working more and more intuitively, and I have a wide range of language to draw on, so whatever seems appropriate goes in, and I don't really, I suppose, consciously think about it too much. And in one sense, I'm always looking to work outside of my own defaults, and I do a lot of collage work now, which is not here so much or at all really. But the idea then is to undermine my own defaults, so I'm not making the same thing again and again. So the most recent work then, these are all from 2025, all paintings, and there's the alchemy works in here again because there's various symbols, but one of the most repetitive one or frequent one are the red and white circles, where the red is a symbol for male and the white is a symbol for female. Again, I'm playing on that duality and also playing on the idea of taking something which is essentially abstract and trying to give it a kind of narrative value and imaginative resonance within the image. And then actually the silver one is influenced again by James Hillman, where he talks about silvering the image or silvering the glass. So you silver the glass, it reflects you back. The image of the painting reflects the painter, but also it's the object watching the artist as the artist watches the object. And so part of the play here as well is to try and create a more objective space. So you can not so much judge or come up with a final answer, but that you can maybe remove more of your own subjectivity, your own defaults, and see the image as something pure in itself. Because one of the ideas I think I work on particularly now is that painting is a language unto itself. So it's not me just expressing myself, it's me expressing or creating almost a whole new version of myself in paint. So it's, Jacob Needleman has a book called I and Not I, and I like that idea that having two different selves, where you have the I of yourself as you corporally exist in a space, and you have the not I that may exist in something else. That's mostly it. So Cristín and I now are going to chat for a while, and then there'll be 10 minutes at the end if you want to ask questions, okay? Yeah.
Okay, thanks Gavin.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome everybody as well. I'm Cristín Leach. I've been wondering where to start.
Okay.
And I might, well, as you mentioned, you asked me to write an essay for the book published, and I might start with a little bit from the essay just to maybe anchor us.
Sure.
This is a bit from the essay that I wrote, which begins, a studio visit with Gavin Hogg the previous September has revealed some repeat concerns. And I think we can hear when Gavin's talking, he has repeat concerns that repeat all the time throughout the work and over the decades, I think, as well. And you add new concerns as you go, and you revisit them. But here I've written, and they are nearly all to do with language, the language of painting. Painting is a language born in the cauldron of the studio, says Hogg. So that's something you said to me when I visited you in the studio. And I've written in an email at the start of August, you wrote to me, as I get older, I see my practice as less a demonstration of self and more a collaboration with language in all its available forms. So there's a couple of interesting things there, but I was really interested as you started talking in a phrase you used. I think we can see that for you, art and language are a puzzle, right? And also painting, it seems to me, when I look at how you talk about painting and the other art forms that you engage with, but this is primarily a painting show, which is also interesting. You approach painting as solving a problem, and persistently and consistently returning to the problem.
Yes.
It seems to me that that's what's going on, and that's what's kept the energy of the work going, that you're constantly returning to the problem. So you used a phrase that's something, one of the works over here is still under negotiation.
Yes, beneath.
Right.
Yeah.
And I suppose, so I better come to a question. So in a way, it's hard to ask questions because this is all still under negotiation, and I know that you sometimes return to paintings and add to them later. Maybe we'll start with something really concrete, which is, it's 42 years since you graduated from your Since you started, sorry. So
yes.
It's 42 years since you started art college, okay? And in this room we have 42 artworks.
Yes.
And they're dating, as you said, across that entire span, right?
Yeah.
Would you maybe just talk about why now, why this moment of 42 years, and why you wanted to look back at what you'd done and where you'd come to in this space, and why you gathered these particular works in this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've had several shows in this space now. I've had 6 shows in this space, 5 separate shows since 22 to this year, right? And then the kind of 6th show was a reprise. But again, each of these shows are a mixture of, I wouldn't say, new and older work. So I'm looking at my practice. So we had COVID and obviously lockdown and everything else. So this was kind of me coming out of the space. So the first show was here in 2022. And actually, Carrie Long had some of her flower sculptures in that. And I was interested as well in not so much collaborating with somebody else as in making a combined piece, as having something else within the space. And again, this was very interesting because Carrie's interest in the natural environment and flowers, and I had these flower paintings, and I thought, oh, there's an obvious kind of play, right? But I had several shows, several collaborations, and this, I suppose, is a culmination in a way of that process, right? Where I was examining my practice, because again, it's, you know, I spent, I suppose, the last 4 decades working, and the idea always is how to energize it, how to put myself in a position where, yes, I create more problems. And now I've even got to the stage where, again, some of these paintings were finished and then they weren't. And then they were finished again, and then part of me was going literally, nah, I need something more. And of course, where is this coming from? It's coming kind of like, it's like an itch. It's like at the back of my head. And I'm there taking a chance, and I think, you're just going to like destroy it. But I thought, no, let's do it. Well, let's as that, was that punk song? You know, kick it till it fucking well breaks. So you keep on pushing something, but the idea is you can actually push it till it just begins to strain, possibly, right? But of course, what I make doesn't really strain because it's just too kind of aesthetic at the end. But there's lots of things in there that I couldn't. You think this is the first, which is like, that's a very easy thing to order. It's black and white and red, and it's verticals and horizontals. Whereas now I will start putting an element within a painting for it to cause a problem. But this show as such is, I like this space, I like the accessibility of it, I like the scale. I brought these works in here, and this is what I brought, and amazingly it all fit.
But so when you sit here surrounded by this, do you feel a sense of resolution? Is it like, I was curious about whether you were drawing a line under 42 years and going, look what's been done, or are you, when you look back, are you still seeing new problems to solve and revisiting the problems? I'm curious about whether you can sit here and feel satisfied with the shape of this work over that period of time, or does it just bring up more puzzles and problems that you would like to reapproach and continue to try and solve through paint?
No, actually, no. It's funny when I did this, because as I said to you before the talk, I make a lot of collage work now, and I've been doing that for like the last 10 years, and they're all sketchbooks, so they're a different kind of thing. And this is a painting show, as you've said, and I didn't realize it, but yes, it would seem that I'm kind of drawing a line as such, or certainly marking a level of development, and a way, I suppose. Well, again, another great Hillman phrase is style of consciousness. that somebody brings a style of consciousness to a situation, and that the painting and the way these things are organized is one style of consciousness. And even when I say something about the work as a collaboration between myself and the environment, that's kind of the work to come, really. This work has that to a degree, because again you have the graffiti and stuff like that, so there's indications of it, but most of this work is almost wrestled entirely from my own imagination, with obviously looking at painting and influenced by other visual languages and reading and music. But there's a lot of the new things I'm making incorporate photography, incorporate actual recognizable elements which are not mine, that I have changed, all right, but here all these elements are mine, apart from, again, minor things like the Rousseau tiger or the graffiti.
Well, speaking about collaboration and bringing in other elements, the video piece that's over here, the sound is off at the moment.
Yes.
Would you talk a little bit about that? So that's from the show that you had in 2023.
So I suppose I have a very particular relationship with this space. And Limerick as a working environment. So my studio is just around the corner, so this is very physically accessible, so it becomes an extension of the studio. And so I had the first show with the flower sculptures by Carey, and then the next one just a couple of months later in November, I did a sound collaboration with Robbie Murphy, and I wanted to interrupt the space, right? And that's all I had. So I thought I'd build a wall. I thought, okay, I can't really hold. So I built, ended up being an object. So it's 8 feet high, 12 feet long, 4 feet deep. And I thought, well, what do I do with that? And of course I'm doing this, and this is the beauty of it. I just like decide, this seems like an idea. Why not do this? So I ended up collaging it with old drawings, which I thought I'd do. But one side actually was about 50% covered with rejection letters from back in the day when you used to get hard copy, as opposed to people now don't even condescend to send you an email. But that's fine too. So that was that, and I built this thing and collaged various sides, painted various sides, and then the sound was on top and speakers, and then there was work around the wall, but so the audience has to come in and negotiate the space. So that was in November of 22. And then I thought, well, what do I do with this next? And I had a painting which turned out, which had a coffin shape in a small painting, same scale as this, 40 by 30. And I thought, and of course the Jungian thing is that death can be a symbol for rebirth, or can be about rebirth or transition. And certainly it's about transition. You're no longer in one space, you're moving into another. So I had this coffin painting, and I was there looking at it going like, oh, that's interesting. So I decided, what the hell, let's cut a coffin shape out of the wall, right? Because I had this idea initially that it would divide the space and you would move through it, and maybe there would be different work on each side. But that was too kind of complicated for the show in November 22. So I just built the one thing, and then I had this, like I said, 8 by 12 wall section, and I decided to cut the coffin shape into it and then to illuminate it from the inside. And then I thought I'd seen Carey, sorry, not Carey, but Courtney do a endurance performance in this space where she was, put herself through physical torture for like 6 or 8, 12 hours, as the case may be, and the final rendition was cutting her hair off, right? And I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I should, it just dawned on me then that, it would be interesting to have her in that space, transverting that space, lying down, as you can see from the video. And then I had a print from 2003 called Lip Reading, based on a poem by John Liddy, who's a Limerick poet, lives in Madrid. And I had this poem, and it's just a pair of lips, and you see the bubble, but the bubble's disintegrating the maze. And I'm there going like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but that's 2003. And I'm going like, okay, now it's 2023. And I'm going like, yeah, so she'll be blowing bubbles. So it became a play, and this I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. I'm just kind of like, I'm at play, right? Yeah. And there's, people say there's endless possibilities. There may not be endless, but there's certainly a lot of room to move, and I'm no longer painting. I'm physically moving through the space. And I suppose it became a kind of liberation as well, because the environment comes in, the collective as well, because I wanted to do something that just wasn't more painting. right?
Yeah.
So you know, you want to surprise, if at all possible, the viewers. And of course, they came in and saw the wall, and they started reading all the newspapers. You know, it's like stuff like this, and reading the bits of text and stuff. So it was a whole different level of engagement. And then the when Courtney is there lying blowing the bubbles, and as the music is going as well, and the initial, when at the opening, it was the only light in the space, so the light comes out of the wall. So you have this kind of luminous coffin with somebody blowing bubbles, and and of course you can't even see the work around the walls. There's a nice photograph there of Jeff and Jan looking at one of the prints in the corner, using their phone to light it up.
Yeah.
And that in itself is like it's not Chardin who did the candle paintings from the 18th century. Anyway, it's
Yes.
like an 18th century classical
Yes.
painting.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and that was what, 23.
Yeah.
Then the end of 23, I did the reprise for you, and I had somebody else blowing the bubbles.
That's right.
Her I have to get goggles for, because she wasn't as hardcore as Courtney. Courtney was
bubbles
just
were bursting in her eyes.
bubbles, and they're just running into her eyes. Her eyes are getting raw and raw, and there's tears coming down, you know.
So, you know, it's interesting because you're talking there about being at play in the space, and I'm curious about what that series of collaborations did in terms of your approach to painting, or did it change your approach to painting afterwards? Because you were very interested in getting a different type of energy into the room. So collaborating with 3 different artists who brought a different energy. And I know when we spoke before, you said to me, and it's quoted in the essay, the early paintings were all about control. And so being at play in a space, collaborating with other artists who are possibly unpredictable in what they might bring, is the opposite of that, right? And I just wonder now, these 2025 paintings, the recent paintings, how have they been affected by those collaborations, or that space you gave yourself to be at play?
It's a good question. In ways, I suppose the easy answer, in ways that maybe they haven't, that these are really something I was started with those back 10 years previously.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at those, and they go back again as well, looking at the language I've been using. And that these, I suppose, what was in the part of my mind, and this one from 2019 talks about it as well.
Is this one here?
Yeah, in the corner, Paintworks display. So there's a great poem, well, I'd say great poem, but whatever poem, I like the idea. Somebody sitting in a cemetery in Italy, and they're talking about the living haunting the dead. Right? So I spent a lot of time haunting dead painters, right? And one of my favorite dead painters to haunt is Gustave Moreau. So he's a late 19th century painter, symbolist. Was very successful in the salon, mid 19th century, but eventually became more kind of reclusive and eccentric, and had these pieces of work he would work on for years, literally, like Salome and John the Baptist, Orpheus, things like this, right? But with the color quality and the kind of oil painting quality that I was interested in getting to. And that's what these paintings became about, but also linked into ideas of symbolism, Jungian psychology, and alchemy. But yes, there's most certainly, they don't really, well, I don't know, they do and they don't. I suppose
my question is, were you more at play and allowing yourself to be freer and experiment more in collaboration with others than you are when you're yourself painting in the studio?
Yeah, these paintings I think are more serious in ways, because I'm trying to prove to myself that I can make the kind of paintings I want to, right?
Yes.
Which again, I suppose might seem curious after 40 years, but the thing is, within my own mind, it would say, like I talk about the defaults and I have to watch myself, and I never wanted to be one of those people who kept on making the same painting, or, you know, who created a, would say, because this, you know, I could still be making these paintings, or versions of them like this, or these, right? And these were, you know, this is the early noughties, these are quite successful, and selling, well, enough paintings, quite a lot of paintings, as many paintings as I wanted to make it. These are some of the ones, few that are left. But I didn't particularly want to keep on doing that either. I want to keep on challenging myself, and I suppose as well, it's the kind of mental aspect as well, is that the mind is always going. and I'm always looking at stuff. So it's not that so much that I'm agitated, it's that every time, like, you know, looking at the light patches, the light comes through, looking at the clouds and the quality of the silvery light. I'm feeding off things all the time. I'm looking in a bookshop. I'm going like, you know, actually I used to love walking in the bookshops and thinking like, yeah, you could use anything on a book cover. That kind of freedom, right? But the painting is more limited, really, because the nature of the language. Whereas the collage work, it literally, you can do anything with it. And almost the more awkward and unlike me it becomes at times, the less controlled, the more interesting it comes, and then you kind of like rein it back in. So I suppose I was testing myself in a bigger space with the collaborations, and I like that again as well, to get out of the studio. I think there was a kind of social thing about it as well, to get out of the studio and just engage with other people, but certainly almost as well to get away from painting, so I could like come back to the painting again. And then I'll probably move away from the painting, because again the printmaking works as a very alternative space. So the painting, you're making paintings, is very direct. You're there going, you're in the studio, it's happening. You know, the prints, I'm getting faster at them because now I actually work directly on the matrix, on the plate, but I would draw these and then I would draw them backwards and then I would draw them on the plate. And I thought, man, the OCD is getting a bit out of hand, you know. But, you know, this would take days to make that. And then I'd print it. But the relevant point being, a very different type of space. You're kind of rearranging your mind. And again, you're also working on a mirror image. And I suppose one of the culminations is that I decided, so the actual piece on the left is the actual plate. They're holograph plates. So they were inked up with black ink. And then printed on these, well, black and little dots of red and pink red on this, and they're printed. But I like the idea of them working as a mirror image. And again, it's a very different kind of space. It's a different kind of processing, and it's a different kind of thinking. Because even as I worked on the coloring of the plates, I thought, well, I want this to work as an object. Because normally you would make the print and it wouldn't matter what the plate looked like because it was irrelevant. It would just had to hold the correct amount of ink. Now I wanted to make the plates so they were actually aesthetic objects in themselves, and they're actually based on collages, or at least some of them are. I don't know if those two are actually, but some of them are based on collages. So I'm always looking for different ways to work in different headspaces, and also ways to continue the conversation. Because it's kind of like I'm working, I'm breathing. I've got this, you know, one of the paintings I made just a couple of years back. It's called Studio Aquarium, but it's a shark in an abstract painting. And I thought, I'm a bit like a shark. Supposedly a shark has to keep on swimming to breathe, but I don't know how true that is. But again, it's an idea. So you kind of keep on moving to keep on breathing. That I kind of never stop, you know. Basically.
I'm always listening to the words you're using when you talk about your practice and your work, and you use the word wrestle when you talk about wrestling. So you're like wrestling with painting and you're solving problems, and it's like, I wonder, can I ask you about this big piece here from 1996? So this is called Love Song, triptych, and it's pretty striking here in the room actually, and it feels very now. You know. And would you talk about it? Why this is a key piece, and why you've brought it back into the room now? So 1996 is like nearly 30 years ago, right? Which seems crazy. But you know, if you could have maybe made that this year. Do you feel that yourself? It's
funny. I suppose there's a time element within the work as well, that time kind of folds, or that time just exists and you move back and forward through it, that the time itself doesn't move. This is one of three, and each one had a maze to the left with a circle, each one had a verticals on the right, and then each one had a different center panel. And the easy answer is yes, I'm just trying to expand the language.
So using the graffiti, which is based on a photograph you took of graffiti.
And that's the only one with graffiti. And another one is primarily, say, blue and yellow. That has just a kind of abstract scumble center, and they're actually made as well from studies. And the right hand panel on the blue one actually has before I ever knew what I meant, has a yellow and red triangle positioned on top of each other, tiny in the space. And then the other one, I don't think it's anything in the right hand panel as such. It just has that kind of stage space. But yeah,
this has the word stop right in the middle of it.
Yes.
Which is like, I mean, what do you want to happen when people? So I'm curious too that when you have words and when you use collage and you've taken pieces from magazines on the letters, which I might ask you about in a minute, I think for audiences often the language, the visual word overrides. Sorry, the word adds meaning that overrides the visual often for audiences. So you see the word stop and you see that before you see the colour or before you see the composition. And so there's a sort of challenge there to the audience to look beyond the words you can see, and somebody looking at the collaged wall is, as you said, picking out like, oh, what does that say, what does that say? Because we're sort of primed to look for the words, for the meaning. So what do you think, I mean, why are you interested in doing that, mixing those two things together? And what do you, I mean, what are you thinking about what's happening to the audience when they're seeing language words and visual language, which is the painting language that you started to speak about at the beginning, the language of painting?
Yeah, I'm curious about the text and the use of text, because as a general rule, you know, you shouldn't put text in painting.
Well, you can do whatever you like, you know.
Yeah, I know, But we say it would have been, especially when painting, I suppose, was more prevalent, say back 30 years ago. That you don't put text in painting, and you're right, it works as a focus. I was just playing again, I think, with this piece on the idea of the street, and you would see on garage doors, you would see stop or no
like
parking
a stop sign.
Or no parking. I think I was playing between putting stop or no parking on it, but I went with stop. But
it is also like a message to yourself, like stop. Like this is the end of this painting. Because I know that you revisit things, you know, and it's hard for you to let go sometimes, of course. Or you're like, it's not finished yet, and 2 years later, like I know this one, it's this one.
This one I spent 2 years working on, but quite particularly because of the kind of, to try and get the balance between the light and the shadow. So again, that works accurately, but it's not completely accurate. It wouldn't quite work like that if that was outside, but I wanted to give that sense. But I had difficulty getting the yellow up to that kind of vibrancy. And so it's kind of pointillist painted. And there's a plane on the, like the pointillist or the impressionist, where you put dabs of colour and your eye mixes the colour. So you get an extra kind of vitality out of it. And part of the things as well is with those paintings, I'm actually teaching myself how to paint, because I've been painting, 15 years at that stage. And part of me was going like, there's a lot of technical things I don't know how to paint, how to do light and dark. Not that I particularly wanted to become a representational figurative painter, but I was kind of interested in setting myself that challenge. And yes, I spent 2 years working on that. On and off and working on, but on various other things. And again, as well, busy exhibiting and selling work and kind of moving around the country and stuff like that.
There's one here. Is it the one with the boat on the red line?
Oh,
it's just there. Like, I looked at your Instagram and you've posted a few different versions of that because you returned to it. So it's also interesting that you've kept photographic record of what they looked like before you made the changes. So you had on your Instagram, you had version 1 and version 2.
Yeah, these paintings change. So let's say, I suppose the one beside it is one of the few paintings that survived its original incarnation with only some slight additions over a couple of months. The yellow one beside it, I think it's called Yellow Storm, I don't know. But this is the Sailor of Oblivion. The little purple boat and the red line. So the red line occurs, right? So it's kind of, maybe it's a high wire circus line. Here though, it's the Sailor of Oblivion. So it comes from a song, like the Doppelganger comes from a song or a reference to a song. So there's a David Bowie song sung by Jack L called My Death. And I think actually the lyric is Sails of Oblivion, but I thought Sailor of Oblivion was more useful. So, and if you take a kind of artist, the kind of continuous addiction to the work, And there's a Paul Durkin poem that says, like, he moved through his exile like waves through a landless sea. So again, the sailor of oblivion is in oblivion. He's gone. He could be anywhere. He is nowhere. There is no land coming up. But also the boat, this is purple and the line is red. And I take the idea of the infrared and the ultraviolet, so they're a spectrum of light that you can't actually see, but you know they're there. So they're at each end is a spectrum just beyond what you can see. And so that's what I like. And again, the black spot, then it becomes quite possibly the alchemical black sun or the shadow taken from Jung, where a lot of the richness of your unconscious or even your own talents may be pushed into the shadow, that it's not necessarily a negative thing, that it contains other possibilities. You know, like very simple things, like if you always wanted to, you know, play violin, but growing up you could never do it. That's down there in the shadow, and maybe you'll eventually get the opportunity, right? And you have obviously the talent to go with it. So these are worked and worked again. And I don't know, like a lot of the time, like again, the one on the far right is Won't You Be My Persephone? So I've been looking at that. That was finished for about 3 months till I decided I needed one more thing. And it became the kind of slightly turquoise circle, which also had to be at exactly the right tonal level that it almost melts into the background. So you're looking at something. So a lot of what goes on in these paintings is about the resonance of light and taking the tones down, and like a Moreau and or even a Rembrandt, the digested blacks, that you're taking the tone down, that the thing is that dark it almost becomes luminous. So you have a contradiction there. It's like the twilight, where things start to glow in a very low level light. And of course, if you want to exhibit paintings, you're better in a lower level light than high level light, because high level light will flatten them, whereas the low level light will make them glow depending on their color qualities. But yeah, these are looked at and worked off over time again, and kind of pushing them, because part of me is kind of like, ah, yeah, it's fine, it's great, I love that. Then the part of me is going, nah.
So you're always dancing with notions of failure and success, I think, all the time. And I suppose if you're going to have a career that has gone on, you know, as long as yours has, there are going to be times of failure and success as well. And I know you speak about that, and you have spoken about that, like times in your career when the paintings were selling well. I think, I don't know what the phrase was you used when you talked to me about your dalliance with galleries
that's it,
early 2000s. But I'm wondering, would you talk to us about this painting over here, Trinity, yeah, because you did post a story about that on your Instagram, which are you happy to tell that story? About Trinity and what happened, where you got, why it's here, where you got it from, and so it was painted in 1987.
1987.
So it's the blue square painting over here.
One of, I think, 6 shows that were in the, like I said, diploma degree show, and the college took it. It was the best one, I think. And certainly it's the only one left, and they took it for the college collection. That's fine, no fee, nothing. They take a work, that's fine.
So it's the Limerick School of Art and Design.
Same School of Art and Design. So so I did the master's degree in 87, 88, and then I'm in Birmingham for 88 until 89, and then September 89 I come back to Limerick. I'm doing a teaching fellowship 1 day a week, and I'm working in the college. I have a studio space, great. And when I'm walking in, that was in Bruce House, which is since knocked down, so I don't know where they're going to put the plaque, but that's okay. So I'm walking across the bridge, and I'm going down to George's Quay, which was the kind of mothership of the college at the time, and sitting in a skip outside, which is half full of rubble, is that painting. And I'm there going like, you know, it's like, and I go like, so anyway, I kind of dig it out gently and pull it out of the skip and just take it away, and you know, going like, and you go like, this is, you know, kind of fortuitous, and it's kind of the collective, and it kind of talks about value or lack of value, as the case may be. And I thought, you know, obviously somebody was just tidying up. You know, and you go like, great, thanks for that. So great. So I took it away, and I still have it now, thankfully.
And here it is now. But when I saw it on your Instagram, I presumed it was a small painting. I didn't, because you know, you can't tell scale. I just thought, I don't know, and I'm really surprised how big it is that it was in a skip. And it's that big. I was quite surprised. Were there any other artworks in the skip?
No, it's just that one. That one was special. They didn't bother throwing anything else out. They decided that one had to go. You know, everyone's a critic. You know, it's like that in the rubble. You know, so it was, so I pulled that out, which was said very fortunate. I had some of my works on paper from college, all right, and this painting and 1 or 2 other paintings, but not very much work.
So that's one of the
not very much work, and that, like I said, is based on abstract expressionist ideas, so these like happen on the canvas. Now, as the work, I suppose a lot of the work does now, but I went through phases where things would be studies and they would be worked up more slowly, as the two pieces beside it actually are studies for the paintings, final paintings I made on the MA. And like I said, the triptych has studies, and then the prints have studies as such, as in terms of their drawings and things like that. So there's a process. Now I suppose the later work again is essentially made on the canvas, and it ends as one image, and then quite often it's painted over again, because the one just behind you with the grids, that was a different painting, and I decided just to paint over it. And then other paintings, the one actually just above your head, the three shadows, for some strange reason it's called four shadows, but it's actually three shadows. And again, I'm playing with the ideas, and I probably will grow to dislike this title, but it's called Four Shadows Trapped in a Generally Agreed to Have Failed Abstract Painting. So I'm just playing around with, again, the language and the perception of it, you know.
There's actually quite a lot of humour often, especially in your collage work, because you're playing with language and words. And I think you maybe remove some of the humour when you do it from the painting, because it's like, this is your serious work, but it retains the humour in the titles often. But there's one piece, I don't know which one it is, which is, the start of the title is Last Rays, but you'd come up with an extra title for it to do with AI, was it? Do you even remember that? I don't know, I saw that.
Oh yeah, which one
is that?
Behind you, yeah.
It's this one.
Yeah. It's called Last Rays, and the title in brackets was Vitruvian Man Loses His Job to AI. So yeah, because there's a circle in it, and there's nothing in the circle apart from an X.
Well, I'm going to open it up to see if people have questions, but I have this vision in my head. My dad talks about if something is difficult, he says it's hard sums, you know. It's like, he goes, oh, that's hard sums, you know, which just goes back to like school, you know, when you were doing a hard problem. And I think often when you're talking about painting, it's like, it's like you've hit onto something that's like hard sums. It's like you've found a problem and you're going to wrestle with it. You're trying to figure it out, you know. And there's a sense of that all the time in the work, I think. I'm interested in the contrast between that and your more playful stuff that you let yourself do when you and I'm curious about what might happen next as a result of looking back over this period of time and as a result of the collaborations. But I might. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Anybody want to? Yeah. Anyone have a question? No. Yes. No. Yeah.
So could I just give general?
Go ahead. Yes. Please do. Yeah.
And just over 42 years. I mean, that's a career. At the time. And fashions change even in painting.
Yes.
And have you tried to resist it or to go with it? Or do art, I mean, I don't want to start a opinion on it, I'm just saying, do you think artists struggle with it or sort of take it on board?
The couple of ways it works, right? I think I'm always concerned when you hear about young artists and they're like one to watch or becoming quite successful, right? Because what happens basically, you become branded. And this is your type of painting, right? Okay, so that's something I was never interested in, right? So, yeah, the general trends I wouldn't really be interested in. Like it's always, I'll be looking at a lot of dead painters. Like live painters I used to look at would have been somebody like Howard Hodgkins, but he died. So in terms of contemporary paintings, there's people of interest, but not as of interest, like painting in terms of, say, the collective zeitgeist or psyche, whatever, has been pushed into a different place. Because even with, say, one of the anecdotes I tell about this painting, 2006, is that the woman who bought that had bought a flat in Dublin, but she bought this painting and didn't have a bed. She had a blow-up mattress and didn't have a couch, but she bought a painting, right? So you wouldn't get that now as such, right? Which is fair enough. Well, you might. Hey, anybody here, I'm open to suggestion. Sell your couch, buy a painting. But so no, I wouldn't watch things like that. I'd say on occasion I do make things which I would consider to be a little more commercial in terms of some of the prints and things like this, that they're smaller, they're cheaper to buy, and and I like also the idea that somebody likes it and takes it home. There is that, but that wouldn't be a main driving force, no. I suppose more and more always interesting example, but also is the idea of the outsider artist. Always been interested in outsider artists, and the idea that, well, not even the idea, the reality that they make the work for themselves. They are their first audience, most important audience. Now, some of them have become very famous, things like this. That's another kind of story. But the genuine ones, and some of them are as well, came out of mental institutions or were incarcerated in mental institutions, but the work was for themselves, right? So, and sometimes some of the work I like, but generally I like that kind of idea. So certainly I've got to the stage now where I am making the work for myself. I do consider the audience, but because I suppose I've become so specialized in ways, I can't really worry about the audience too much. I'm delighted when somebody likes the work, and I sold one of these paintings, fantastic. I'm always interested in the conversation. But even as I was writing my notes, part of me was going, no, you can't say that. That's just kind of you going on. Yeah, nobody will get that. And part of me is going like, yeah, I'm not sure I get it. You know, it's like, so you kind of, there's different levels of engagement. But certainly to answer the question is, no, I would not be too bothered. Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question about fashion and context, you know, which you've asked, I think, and about feeling out of fashion, because I think we spoke a little bit about that, but also you don't care. Do you?
No,
you don't
I don't care.
He doesn't care. So, so that's not relevant, you know.
No,
but also there was a period in your career where you were in fashion, but that's sort of almost nothing to do with you in a way, in a strange way.
No, that's where it comes about the collector, where you can say the zeitgeist or whatever. It's like, what is the energy? What are people looking at? What is the culture industry interested in? You know, it's like, because one of the collages I've made recently, so I always, you know, the Sunday Times is my main source, and you got the Culture magazine, so it says culture. And then I've got, and it says, you know, reduced performance, responsibly resourced. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of my attitude to popular culture at present, really. It's kind of, you know, it's not aiming too high and nobody's trying too hard. Certainly in the visual art, obviously, there's lots of fantastic paintings and movies and writing and, well, not so much paintings, but movies and writing, etc. going on. But yeah, the painting is certainly under a bit of pressure.
Yeah. There's a strangely buoyant cynicism in the way that you talk about all of this. You know, like you're not running out of energy to keep approaching the problem.
No.
And yet there's this sort of healthy cynicism about the whole thing as well.
Yes, sure.
Please go ahead.
You're very prolific, obviously. Is your work a coping mechanism?
Yeah, yes, I would say there's a level there where every day I try and make something, right? So there would be, especially, we say again back to the sketchbooks. So the sketchbooks came out of basically a period of depression, really. I wasn't making any paintings. This would be like 10 years ago. And it wasn't very serious. It was just kind of de-energized more than anything. I kind of lost as to what I'm doing, right? So I'm in the sketchbooks. I'm doing lots of writing as well. So these things start off as diaries, and then I started coloring them in. And then I like the idea, the palimpsest. How is it? Palimpsest?
Palimpsest?
Palimpsest, that's it. That, you know, it's a text obliterated and worked into something else. You change it into something else. But yeah, part of it is, you could say, a coping mechanism. But also, I suppose, it's more than coping. It's like a conversation. You know, it's like, you know, you get a bit de-energized or, you know, irritated or depressed by things, and you think like, yeah, I'd much prefer to be angry. You know, and start working that. Or just, you know, it's like, you know, start listening to some music, forget about stuff, listen to some music, have a beer, make some work, and not really care what you're making. Come back in next day and look at it. Because the other thing about that works with the sketchbooks is that there's always a conversation as well. And I think that's important for me, to keep a connection with the work. So I used to say as a students when I was teaching, or anybody really, I said, even if you're going through a difficult period or you're not quite sure what to do, I said it's very useful to go into the studio every day and just look at the work. And not for, you know, 2 or 3 hours, but, you know, 10, 15 minutes, make a connection, right? To keep that dialogue going on, that you're some kind of interaction.
So the process is as important as the outcome?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, yeah. It's how I define myself. And it's what I enjoy doing, it's what I find of interest, you know. Because again, you know, on an average day it can be a lot of just kind of dull stuff that everybody has to do, and I'm there doing it, and I'm going like, oh man, you know, it's like, but you know, and then I start like, you know, working in a sketchbook or doing a bit of painting, and yeah, I'm kind of back in the zone, you know, somewhere. Again, back really to the Jackson Pollock idea, that kind of sense of self, the most vital sense of myself is while making work, you know. and preferably good work, but some days it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just making. And again, of course, things come back, because it's been one of the things I talk about in terms of exhibiting is you have the work in the studio and you move it out into a clean space, and things you're looking at and you're there going like, yeah, you thought, oh, that's, you know, my favorite painting or best painting, or both, hopefully. And then you have other stuff and you go like, and then you put them in a clean space and you're there thinking like, yeah, the not so stuff is kind of actually more interesting than the other stuff, because quite often the other stuff will be too easily solved, or will be something you already know. So I do, another phrase I will use in relationship to the work is the idea that like I'm more interested in the unknown. So I'm interested in setting myself a puzzle, a challenge, but also making an image, and I don't know what that is. Now I have ideas without a doubt, it's not completely out of nowhere, but I'm looking at it. And then with the collage work, I like taking the, let's say, photography and usurping its meaning, undermining its meaning, taking an advertising slogan and moving one word. So it becomes something else, you know.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks for that question. Does anyone else have a question? Oh, we have a few more. Yeah, do you want to go ahead? Yeah, I'll come to you in a second. Okay, yeah.
Gavin, when I look at your work, I kind of see each as an individual, kind of like a window into a personal narrative. So I'm thinking of the movie Inception or Edgar Allan Poe or something like that. Going away from the, I suppose, the kind of the, I suppose maybe the intellectual kind of aspect of, say, a piece or a group. Does each one have its own personal narrative that's not, you know, that's not kind of based in science or, you know, philosophy or anything like that?
I wouldn't say each one. I'd say bodies of work have particular narratives or imaginative spaces, right? And as I've said before, I'm looking for an imaginative resonance. And once it, and some of them, yeah, I suppose, do have a personal narrative, but I'm dubious about that in terms of not so much exposing myself as a kind of giving too much space to kind of just the bullshit going on in my own mind. That I like the idea that it's actually doing something in the language that's more interesting that I'm bringing to it. But at the same time, yes, the paintings are informed by my own imaginative space. But a lot of it might not actually be based in physical reality as such. But again, back to, we'll say, Hillman would talk about the imaginal space being a real space. You know, that's where things happen. That's here, obviously, you know, you kind of fall in love in your head, you know.
Yeah, but it seems to be going more and more, I suppose, into kind of like a realistic narrative. I could say still life, but landscapes and things. And it seems to be a thread each time. So, you know, another 40 years will you have got to, you know, sort of a photorealistic painting?
Yeah, no.
Because it's a really interesting thread.
Yeah. What I do like though is the play of natural light. Right, I do like that play, and I used to always think it was a way for the audience to get into the painting, and I'm not so quite sure now that it really works like that. But the idea that when whatever I'm looking at, I'm always running through the idea of natural light and shadow. Right, so the perception of the space is based in real space, yes. So yes, you could make a logical progression there. I would actually start making paintings of scenes, photorealistic or representational scenes, but it's unlikely, because I think I'd probably get a bit bored with it. Depends. Once you've had a lot of time in my hands, maybe I would, because again, it's always interesting to have something which takes a lot of time. Like the prints are interesting because they take quite a lot of time. You know,
there's steps involved.
Yeah.
Have to be followed.
Yeah, to make something like this, you know, it's like takes days.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's quite straightforward, black and white on paper. You know, like these monoprints took, you know, minutes. Yeah. Well, you know, 20 minutes maybe between making them and running to the press. These things took days, you know. And again, the dragon, whatever, water dragon, that would have taken, that could have taken at least 2 solid days. It could take 16 hours to make. Yeah. From inception to completion.
So we've time for another, maybe do two. Go ahead,
Gavin, you said an interesting phrase there in just your last paragraph about who perceived the light in painting to be where you reel in the viewer. There is a recurring white triangle in this very, very beautiful disused panel. Is the white triangle anything other than?
No, the white and the red are alchemical symbolism for male and female. So the white is female and the red is male.
You said that about the circle before. The same is true of triangle.
Yeah, as far as I understand it, or at least I put like that's my sense of it, right? And again, it creates a possibility of a narrative within the work. Some of them playing because one's there's called keep me hanging on. Actually, I think the full title would be like keep me hanging on till I'm well hung out to dry. And again, it comes from there's a bit there. I think that comes from an Elvis Costello song is folded in there as well somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. There was one more.
Matthew,
there was.
Go
ahead.
I'm just
looking at the one in front of me. And you mentioned it came as a kind of a revelation to you.
Yes.
After the event, and this is the style of art I'm particularly interested in what emerges from the unconscious and how we might retrospectively read what's coming through. And anyone who's worked with unconscious knows the language as you do. There can be a metapoetic quality to it. And that metapoetic quality might have something beyond just your personal life story.
Yes.
It might have something for the broader cultural sphere.
Yeah.
So in terms of this image, I know a big Jungian idea is the splitting of the opposites. Think of great Father Sky Spirit and great Mother Earth. And that would be Jung's critique of Christianity, where they've been cleaved, really, and the one got squashed into the shadow of unconscious great Mother Earth, the descent below. So what seems to be coming through your work, and it's nice that the revelations come, is this notion of the marriage again of earth and heaven, great Sky Father, great Mother Earth. We get a sense of a communio, and this would be one with a poetic thread that was a big idea in especially his alchemic work, which they and all of that. And that's got something to do with the Rainmaker story. I won't go into all of that. But if you can just have a few words, for me, your work resembles the kind of cathedral of the soul, and it touches on so much of what our culture has lost. In the disenchantment, it's Malay, it's loss of soul, it's absurdism, existential nihilism. So if you've got any few words of the kind of meaning making that your art and your project is bringing to our culture in terms of that notion perhaps of the cathedral of the soul.
Yeah, well, I think that's missing, right? That element, I suppose, we went through a phase where I also read a lot of John O'Donoghue, right? So he talks about the earth and spiritualism, and particularly living in the borough and things like that, and I used to go walking through the borough and that. So yes, I think certainly as a society, especially as we become more disenfranchised with organized religion, which of course is about dogma rather than spiritualism, I wouldn't see myself as a spiritualist as such, but certainly I would see self as somebody who's like interested in the esoteric, interested in certainly the unconscious. And I think as well, the necessity of having a more, a greater awareness about how your mind works and how you also work within the larger environment or collective. I'm not quite sure if that's answering the question, but I suppose it's language as well. I suppose, and I'm kind of working it out as it goes along. I'm attracted, I suppose, to the myth always. As in even this idea, the show, and the last show was riffing on Icarus and the fine art or resurfacing. So you take a myth and you actually, rebrand it or retell it, and the idea in my mind I quite liked, and of course it comes from the number of shows in here, and this is Icarus Big Head and the Demon Tree. Is the idea that you maybe don't have to believe what you're told about yourself as well, that there's a possibility of language there, that the language will actually create a conversation with yourself which will create a level of freedom.
Well, okay, so we're 5 past, so we're going to stop. We don't
Tommy,
one
yes.
more. We won't go on. A quick one.
I often meant to ask you, Gavin, how the hell did you go from being a rugby prop forward to an artist?
You have to
They
do
don't seem like compatible.
Three-word answer to that.
Tenacity and strength.
Would you see yourself as a printmaker or a painter going forward?
Sorry, so that.
Would you see yourself as a printmaker or a painter going forward?
Always the painter, I think. And what I do is defined by painting. So everything I make, I think, even the video, although the video is down to Shane there who's recording this, is at the painterly quality. So the colour, the composition, as things relate to each other and relate to the edge. It's always about painting as far as I'm concerned. I would consider myself a master painter, but also a purist painter. And I just love painting.
Yeah.
And it's always been the thing that kind of got me most energized and excited, and it will keep on working at. And also it's a challenge because it's not something you can. I go through periods where I don't paint. Mm-hmm. I kind of draw, or I make prints, or I make collages. So it's again, it is a kind of dance as you're moving in and out of the work. It's not just something you can do every day. Yeah. You kind of have to, romance it even into kind of, and some days coerce it, and some days just bully it into doing something, as the case may be.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. We'll stop.
Yeah, okay, we'll stop there.
So, as a final word, so this book is for sale as well.
Oh yes, tell them they're €20.
20 euros. This is this one, and there's an SOIB in there, and a piece by Gavin as well. I might just give you a line from that because I think it might sum up some of our conversation. Difficult to sum it up, but the two lines from this are, Gavin Hogg is interested in the seesaw between control and creative anarchy, which is something you said to me. And not reaching a final answer is the mystery that keeps him going. So I think we could probably leave it there. We could probably keep talking, but thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you everybody for being here.